Hi, my name is Liam Conroy, and I am doing a short presentation on the cultural community both of Hope Street Charter Academy, the school in which I teach, as well as Topeka, Kansas, the city that it's located in. So looking at the community of Topeka in general, there are a lot of aspects that are unique about it. Because it is the capital of Kansas, we actually see that it's a fairly large employer of people overall in the state of Kansas. Looking at the different job fields that most folks are inside of course, the top percentage, not surprisingly, is city employees and people who work for the government. I actually used to work for the city in terms of working at its zoo, so I have a little bit of experience with being a city employee within Topeka. The next highest group would be the group that I'm actually a part of now. So looking at certain service sectors in particular, those who are educators, those who work within the medical profession, and those who work within the mental health field. So that's the second highest group of employment within Topeka. The third highest group, excuse me, has to do with manufacturing jobs. My significant other actually kind of works within this field. She works for Hill's Pet Nutrition. And even though she's not on the manufacturing end, there's still lots of people who help to coordinate those products and help them with distribution. So there's a lot of different jobs that extend from those types of businesses that are within Topeka as well. Topeka is a fairly famous center when we start looking at cultural dynamics because it is the location of Brown v. Board of Education. So, very significant historical site. Obviously, at one point in time, there was a lot of racial strife within Topeka, but that court case, monumental court case, helped to push the decision for making sure that there is more equity in terms of education and more equality in terms of treating students equally in that regard. So the high school that I teach at, Hope Street Charter Academy, has a fairly diverse population overall. Hope Street Charter Academy selects its students mostly by need. The students that are part of Hope Street Charter Academy don't do as well in a larger high school setting with lots of other students in the classroom. They need a little bit more one-on-one attention. And they come here for various reasons. A lot of people think of alternative high schools as being only bad kids or kids with behavioral issues. We do have children who have a high rate of truancy. That's certainly a group that we focus on. We have kids who come from different economic backgrounds, including those who are homeless. That's the population that we serve quite a bit within our particular high school. We look at kids who may have high anxiety issues and have trouble with large classrooms. We have some who are parents who need the child care facilities that we have at Hope Street Charter Academy. So we really do have a very diverse group, which I'm proud of as far as the composition of our school. So looking in more specifically to some of the demographics, this is student census information that was taken in 2018, so it's fairly recent, fairly up to date. Looking at the distribution of gender, this was out of a total of about 120 students overall. We see that females weigh a little bit higher than males at 61.34%, and that may be weighted somewhat, again, by access to our child care department. The majority of students who utilize that are female. The other thing that I would like to point out that may not be fully reflected in this statistic, Hope Street Charter Academy does have some students who identify as non-binary. So, because at this point in time there probably isn't a great demographic representation of that, some of our student population identifies that way, and I think part of the reason why they don't mind the atmosphere at Hope Street is that they feel a little less subjugated in terms of that part of their identity, because teachers have more time to get to know those students one-on-one and have a little more time to be careful about pronouns. Looking at our racial background, this is actually pretty similar to the distribution of Topeka itself, if we're comparing it to the city at large. It's still, it's close to it's a majority of white students, close to half. 42.86% are white students. 15.13% are African American. Hispanic students make up 29.41%, and the other portion on there makes up 12.61%. It may be worth noting, in terms of these statistics, we do have many students from mixed racial backgrounds who may identify either as one or the other or multiple races in terms of this demographic. But another important part of that other statistic is to look at First Nations students. Our school does have a decent amount of First Nations kids who come to our school, and we have a little bit more leeway for those who are involved in activities in the reservations that they come from, if they have family that are still out on the res. So we give those students a little bit more flexibility and freedom. We give them access to resources that are exclusively maintained for First Nations kids. We actually have a person on staff who helps coordinate that for them. So that's part of our racial background that we pride ourselves upon at Hope Street. Looking at the economic background, obviously we see an overwhelmingly high percentage of the economically disadvantaged students at 87.39%. This isn't totally surprising, as we can see some amount of correlation sometimes between economically disadvantaged families and students struggling sometimes with academic responsibilities. We do try to provide for our economically disadvantaged students. Lunch is always free at Hope Street Academy. We also provide food and clothing resources for students that are in need. Like I said before, some of our student population is either homeless, or in some cases they may be early emancipation from their parents if they were coming out of a bad situation with them. So we are looking at a lot of students who fall into this category, and we try to make sure to help maintain their needs. We have a one-to-one Chromebook program, so they should have access to the technology they need to complete work at home if they have the opportunity to. The other connection with economically disadvantaged students is that a lot of them are working one or more jobs outside of school. We try to provide class credits for those jobs that they work at if it's something that is legitimate, that they're actually getting a pay stub for and not something that's under the table. Excuse me. And we try to be flexible with due dates for students who are pulling all-nighters at work and have difficulty with completing homework. Looking at our ELL statistics, Hope Street Charter Academy is not as equipped as other schools within the district for English language learners. There are other high schools that have programs that are a little more dedicated to it, but we still have about 5% ELL students overall. I think it's just, again, the fact that there are better resources at some other places. But I think if we have students that have a combination of needing those resources as well as that smaller classroom size, that's probably where our 5% falls in. And then looking at our background information on students with disabilities, here we see it's 7.56%. I don't know with this particular demographic statistic which students they count within this, but I know that I've had so far in my first year and some change of teaching students with autism. And for those students, I don't know if they count toward this statistic or not, but I know for them, the smaller classroom sizes have been beneficial and that they seem to enjoy the program at Hope Street, so that may be somewhat representative of what we're looking at in this percentage. So as you may expect for an alternative high school that focuses a lot on kids who may not be able to complete high school otherwise, our academic information looks a little bit lower than other schools within the district or within the state. So I would bear that in mind when we look at these particular statistics. The graduation rate, again in 2018, that's where these statistics were taken from, was 76.8%. I know that we strive to try and get that as high as possible, but it is difficult sometimes with some students who struggle with even within our program. We have a dropout rate of about 19.3%, which many of you may say, well, that's not a lot in comparison to 100%, but in comparison to other high schools that have closer to less than 10% of a dropout rate, it's fairly high compared to other schools within the district. Our attendance rate is 86%, another thing that we try to focus on. We actually started a program this year to incentivize students to attend school. There'll be prize drawings for students at different points in the year who have perfect attendance, because for a lot of circumstances that we have truant kids who may have some disadvantages in terms of not coming in all the time, but the students who do come in all the time don't really see anything for that part of their effort. So we thought it would be a good incentive to try and keep students in as much as possible. The ACT average for our students is 18.0. And then if we look at our specific standardized test performance scores for the different divisions of levels, so if we're looking at level 1 as sort of the lowest achievement level and level 4 as the highest achievement level, for math performance, For the statistic from this particular year, we were looking at 93.1% of our students at level 1 and only 6.89 at level 2. I can say that based on more recent statistics, we've actually pulled this up significantly in more recent years, but obviously that was something that was really, really needed in terms of focus, was looking at enhancing math performance. English language arts performance, 48.27% at level 1, 44.82% at level 2, 6.89% at level 3. We've actually suffered a little bit of loss in traction in this even since these statistics were taken. To our English language arts performance has more students within the level 1 category, but again, our school improvement plan is focused on ELA skills, and we're hoping to try and enhance that for our students as much as possible. Science performance, which is the subject matter in which I teach, 60.97 at level 1, 21 approximately in level 2, close to 10% in level 3. But we actually had a small percentage, 7.31, who scored within level 4. So obviously we're fairly proud of having students at the highest achievement level there. Looking at social studies, history, and government performance, 25% at level 1, 62.5% at level 2, 12.5% at level 3, so a little bit more even distribution in that one. Our educational options for students, again, like I've already stated with some of our other examples, we try to be extremely flexible with our students. The smaller class sizes are really optimal. We get to have more one-on-one time with our students and build relationships more. It makes it a little bit easier to hold students accountable for certain assignments. Nobody gets lost in the shuffle. I think it does enable us to be able to help students in terms of helping them one-on-one a little bit more than the average teacher would with a classroom of 30. I'd say the average Hope Street class is anywhere from 10 to maybe 15 students, but even that's considered large in comparison to some where you may only have 2 students. We provide extended time for assignments. We have several students who have IEPs that recommend extended time, but we're very flexible with our deadlines at Hope Street. We have a counselor, a social worker, and occasional therapists who come in during the week. So again, for kids who are dealing with different either grief or other sorts of mental blocks that could help prevent academic performance, we have resources for them as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we have childcare for students who have children that need to be taken care of. Again, it's something that can be a detracting factor from education. So just to reflect on our school in total, I feel that we do an excellent job in terms of providing for a wide variety of students. I think that because of our flexibility, it's a very unique place for students to come to. And the big picture that we focus on is a lot of our students wouldn't be able to complete high school at all if our intervention wasn't there. So we're trying to help these specific students who may not do as well in a larger school setting. So I think that our task is something that helps a lot of kids from a lot of different backgrounds. I think that it is important when we look at diversity at Hope Street, and I'm proud of the work that we do. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about diverse learners in this classroom because of how diverse the group is at my school, and I'm hoping to do well within this course and to look at some things that I can do to help improve things for my students as well. Thank you very much for your time.